Good evening, everyone who has been with us before and the newcomers. And on behalf of the American Center in Moscow, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Amira Tulkhanova, and I'm a literary enthusiast from Moscow, Russia, who studied literature in Lincoln, Nebraska. And today, I'm honored to host the reading by a wonderful poet, Corinne Herceg. Corinne Herceg graduated from Columbia University with a degree in literature and writing. Karen's work appears in such publications as American Book Review, Compulsive Reader, North of Oxford, LiveMag, Lead Pub, Whitehot, another Chicago magazine, the Hedgehog Review, and many others. Her second book, Out from Calaboose, New Poems, was released in 2017. Karen is currently working on her memoir. And tonight, Karen is going to read her poems for us for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll get a chance to ask some questions. You can drop them in the chat, and I'll be happy to pose them to Karen. Our team at AMC also has posted on social media a link to poems that will be read tonight and accompanied them with their side-by-side Russian translations so you can read them along. Karen, welcome to Meet the Poet.
Thank you. Hello and privet to our friends in Russia. I hope I didn't manage that too badly.
That was fantastic.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm honored to be asked to share my work with you. I would like to thank Adam Thorburn, the Forum for Cultural Engagement, and its sponsors for this opportunity, and to you, Zamira, and to Anna Krishnitskaya, I think I close at least in that one, who translated my poems into Russian for me. Special thanks to my dear friend, poet and writer Richard Martin. You had the pleasure of hearing him read to you in February. And I also owe a debt of thanks to fellow poets and publishers who've supported my work through the years. If you are listening today, you already understand that art is pure communication of the soul. Creativity is sacred and reaches beyond anything that's temporal or divisive. It fosters communication, connection, and elevates our spirit. We live in a challenging world, but today we are together. My experiences may be different, spiritual journey together. Our experiences in the world pull us in many directions until we find our way home again. Home is universal truth, and we all know that intuitively. I like my poems to speak for themselves. I may give just a little context here and there if I feel it will enhance the experience for you. I'll begin with selections from my book, Out from Calaboose, all my little notes. And then the second half, I'll finish with some newer poems. A calaboose is a single-person prison cell, and these poems are an attempt to release in many forms. In my travels, I can't remember what I left behind. Something in Morocco, a one-day trip on a ferry with goats around the Rock of Gibraltar. Women swathed in black sheets, oblivious to the heat, their disallowed energy herding chickens on the weather-worn deck. Coal-fired eyes avoiding mine. I am a woman too, have herded children, objects, and desires. On this other continent, sweat-woven rugs are hawked to me. Ochre and moss-colored herbal tinctures hold promises to cure what I cannot. A swell of odors wafts through narrow, primeval alleyways. Huddles of figures in stone hollows bake barbaric bread on stone pallets, extended to me by nomadic hands. Primary sustenance like old communion, dry and stiff on my tongue. A curved-backed Bedouin shines a seller's smile, a toothless mouth and beggar's hand, offering objects I can take home to narrate my journey. Back at the hotel, the coast of Spain is blurred through a rain-embossed window, tears streaking for the sweater I left behind in the store of the ruby-frocked merchant, fez tassels swirling among his wares. And all the spoils and discount deals cannot replace the history of my sweater, sitting alone, an ancient culture away, never to come home again. The glass vision. You wanted to build a structure, a monument to your worth, of your worthiness to me, the prize you won, but could not hold. You carried slabs of wood, pouches of nails, studied blueprints, veins stretching across the paper into a vision of your world. That house, too grand to hold the comfort of a family, too bold to assimilate us into the patterns of the land, the community, setting us apart from neighbors and one another. How many birds did we lose, cascading into walls of windows that reflected sun-speckled light that deceived them into thinking a horizon was there, when only death awaited. Hard-hit endings, carcasses lined along the entrance to a dream too large to last. Our bodies lost within cavernous rooms, windows all around, skylights, glass, and endless vistas, specks beyond distance, expansive to the point of gone. Betrayer. The truth is, this is a fearful place. Constant trembling flanked with platitudes and magical thinking, failure drowning in cocktails, lust laughing in a sophomoric comedy as smoke curls through the affluent air. There's a lot of leftover hippie love and broken philosophies. We assent to camouflage, a whimsical toast, a sea of well-wishing, the rejuvenation of a spa weekend. Before the dusk of empty bottles, pill-prompted memories, a closing door, we consider praying again, measures of redemption kicking us back onto the cross, always just shy of resurrection. This one is called Corporate Menu. Don't we love the raw beauty of the starkly indigent, the thought of their rough brown hands, hands of earth we swear to revere, handing us our designer coffee, hand-picked beans from field to table, vegetables harvested under the sun's pierce, from nurturing rays to fluorescent lit aisles, petroleum plastic packaged for the convenience of our impatient lives. A slow sneak of toxic death, engineered crops clothed in the garb of healthy nourishment. Can't you see the peasant, the juxtaposition of his Coca-Cola embossed t-shirt with his indigo, lizard green, plum, poppy-colored poncho woven from his own hands, from an animal he raised in a place we will never know? The cool current of unpolluted streams is on a time clock. Tree bark flakes, plants wither, glaciers melt and slide. And we watch it on monitors, all of it just a click away, heedless that empty shelves will stare us down, stripped harshly by our own greed. A thin season for a young man beheaded for listening to Western pop tunes in his father's grocery store. It is a thin season, culling the air of blue breath, chored at the throat of a young infidel, the forbidden pop tune of his innocence still playing in the annals of his thoughts, kneeling, repetitive, insistent as the accusations of the faithful who behead him on an afternoon like any other. Clouds rising in a decimation of distance between the neck and heaven. Isis, goddess of love, the moon, magic, and fertility, a healing sister of deities, daughter of earth and sky, twists in a massacre of celestial delusions, bearing the severed body back to the arms that bore him, the one who will hear music no more. And this is from a section which is a lot more personal, although I think they're all personal. Maternal elegy. These are a little bit out of sequence, but I'll read this one next. The way the morning light pardons the night, that's the absolution I seek, birthing myself through a placenta of debts, cutting the cord where you dragged me through the mire of your own sins, a maternal bloodbath, the unendurable obligation of love. My eyes sewn shut by your needle fingers, your voice consuming my breath. 20, 40, 60 years pressed into the corner of a lifetime. Nothing to reclaim from dry, splintered bones. My freedom, hell-bent granted, unpunctual, like a posthumous degree. The leaving. It's not the leaving, it's the getting out, Mommy whispered through glazed eyes roomy with loss. The unavoidable last breath, the chest heaving a final rise against time that will soon cease in one body. The hiss of oxygen, a tank of lungs, machines replacing body parts that have surrendered long before spirit. It all murmurs on. It's the price for becoming timeless, to enter a forever place that we tricked ourselves into thinking a body might be. Two olives, please. Mommy takes a long swig of cocktail, always a chance for blurt, a revelation somehow of something we never wanted. Did you know? And so it begins. There's another sister somewhere on another shore, another one of you. Wide-eyed, my sister and I pause as she orders another martini. Two olives, please. This third remains unknown. It was the war and Daddy was lonely, she sighs and sips. Didn't know the possibility of us. Couldn't make it right on foreign shores. He was blinded by Mommy's shiny allure, undefined promises beckoning him homeward. So the baby disappeared, decades gone into distant geography. She shows up now, amid swish and clink at this luncheon of sly glances and gaping mouths, watching us silently from another womb. Uncollected. I awake to the immeasurable sadness of loss, not for whatever was, but what was not. The dream of possibilities and lost connections, the incurable pain of memories that never existed. Mama, I thought you loved me and would care for your own flesh. But you wrung out of me what you could not get from your absent father, philandering German boy, whose pockets you searched as a child, for pennies, for food he drank away. And you took him in, years later, big, groaning, and diabetic, handing over his monthly check proudly, as if he thought that could feed you now, could take back the cold water flats, the hunger for more than food. And you nourished him in your home with heat and comfort. Still, he only grunted and moved his great paw roughly across your head. Still no words, no request for forgiveness. Just you, leaning over his dying face, your tears begging, his eyes vacant, staring beyond yours, as he hissed the lament of growing old, of leaving food and drink and women, but no mention of you. And when I leaned over your hospice bed, looked at you with tears for the last time, you only saw through me into the fog of what you think you lost, but no mention of me. Loving hands. Kneeling in opposite corners, facing pale yellow walls, spines straight as rulers, with impressions from loving hands. My sister and I learned early about a queen who must be obeyed, about disorderly conduct, an education of belt welts for transgressions only children can commit. Guilty for disturbing mommy's perfect world, interrupting phone calls, scattering dirt, ruffling the sheer ironed curtains. Lists of duties created by loving hands made checkmarks in our minds, leaving nothing to chance in the heavy finality of demands. I dusted and polished until shine clashed with brightness, watching with escalating horror as dust particles cascaded in on sheets of bold sunlight, streaking my hopes for salvation. I scrubbed and scoured with the diligence of rescue while living behind stoneworks, a factory churning and forging tombstones, the daily pounding and polishing, mimicking my efforts, sawing through stone, screeching in my ears as I scrambled to stave the many ways to perish. Doing subverted being, destroying us faster than inevitability. I married the order in order to be safe, but my sister divorced its harsh importance, screaming, "Look at me!" Each night, loving hands scrubbed me, an invasion admonishing the dirt I could no longer see. I waited in bed under cover for those loving hands, showing me what I should not know in the dark where I could not see. Daddy, a silent witness, fed pills to his failing organs, rowing his boat steadily while whispering to me that life is but a dream before disappearing quietly. Years later, my sister said, "She looks at you like a lover, and she hates me for it." She would rather have been chosen than ignored by loving hands, the chasm widening between us until we spoke no more, the bruises in our minds raw and spreading like thick red welts. Mommy organized her departure, calling my ear close to her lips, hissing that now I could be free, released from loving hands. But I could not let the dust settle, glass streak, dishes dry on their own, my sons growing neat and clean in her wake, learning early that clothes are washed before hugs are earned. I find myself always in lessening days, reflections startling as time moves me further toward recognition. My eyes shift from the stare in the mirror, the glare that resembles mine. The hands I study, holding them up, wondering in front of my squinting eyes if they combat the inheritance, the long lines of cut stone, insisting we had existed, engraved with the legacy of loving hands. But I am my own jihad, refusing to be sabotaged, looking out into a globe of parts I do not know, the nascent, unlived arrival of myself, defying the gravity of stone, recovering cell by cell, a sculptor's excavation, until I begin to see the outline, the reaching to embrace, loving hands that now hold me in the arms of my own soul. This is a good thing. I'm going to move on to some newer poems. This one is called A Night at Maud's, and it goes back to my days living in Greenwich Village in New York City quite a while ago. It was a different place then. A Night at Maud's. It's not my village anymore, but hey, you can't stop progress, right? The grid is gone. Maybe the persistent threat of violence. It's a subtler destruction, though, from the inside out. At Maud's, at least you had a choice. You picked your poison, as they say. What's yours? Maud was big and dark and sang like she meant it, leaning over to wink at her piano player, his eyes forever closed. She sipped bourbon between notes, lyrics of lost loves, lacerated, frayed, and hopeless. She made us feel we weren't alone in all of it, while we exchanged simpatico looks with other strangers before our eyes glazed over. The bass player flashing a Colgate smile in a midnight face, holding upright, but we saw him lean into it, his wistful breath between notes, hissing, "Hurts so good." Night vision. Some men lace into you like a long trumpet note in an igneous gray 3 a.m. club cloud beyond the fourth bourbon. Gauze in your eyes, toothy glints of promise canceling danger. You ride it like a surfer on dusty shafts before light arrives, slanting in subtly between slats in the blinds, breaking up night vision, now caught in that dry space between the tongue and hope. Trespassers. My body is visiting all the places it betrayed itself, where the demons trespassed, whose words covered my eyes with shrouds. I tripped on my desires, landed in false laps, my head on strips of steel. I saw yellow brick roads, clicked my ruby red shoes and ran, thought there were wizards at the end instead of frightened little men with false promises and large fists behind curtains of uncertainty. And the template for the journey was that maternal voice that whipped with sugar smirks, probing fingers, and pointed tongue, while I pushed a smile through rubber lips and cringed inside of what became an inaccessible heart. obliged. I'm obliged to perform. A dancing bear in an incongruous tutu, a jeering monkey grinding tunes, as if I were in romantic Paris, entertaining outside inspirational cafes. But I'm only on a dirty street corner, faces indifferent, while I screech those songs you said I had to belt, the ones that entertained you, along with the booze and what you got away with. I can't memorize lyrics anymore or sing in tune. When you checked out, you somehow took those talents with you. Now I'm on the endless carousel of faux horses and rhymes that chime like tin echoes in a Disney dream that lies about endings. A history of violence. If I let rain dictate, I'll never get out. The dripping, unrelenting thoughts sitting in folds of my brain with their stubborn past. My grandmother talked to me of Coney Island, Brooklyn stoops, glossy coated recreations, beer-infused dreams of cyclones, barroom brawls of misdirected anger, an airlift of balloons with words in bubbles that float beyond the heads of my dead relatives. They reside somewhere in black and white photos, people in swim trunks, sun-streaked with false laughter, impressions that conspire with memory behind post-war infidelities, relentless hopes and disconnections, glinting images off sunglasses, reflecting back to me the inheritance of fabrications, defiant subterfuge, and intrigues, a hoax of inheritance. If I let rain dictate to me, I will only see the sun in perpetual eclipse and never when it shines. Sudden elegy for KVA. The boy I went to high school with who took me to my prom, he died in the towers on 9/11. I searched for you among the faces on Facebook. Timeline clues, a Webeler names, LinkedIn connections, but you were never there. No instant recognition on Instagram, no tweets into the vast ether of social information. Then, the simplest key overlooked. I find you in the encyclopedia of Google, Holy Bible of Internet. Face matured, content, without premonition. I recognize your mouth, the one that kissed mine in teenage years, and later recover a prom photo, us waving shirt and tux. What would I have said differently if I could have seen you tumbling from towers on that sacrificial day that changed us forever? Your last call home posted online, the audible evidence of loss. Your wife listens to it over and over again when she can bear it. Here's the quiver of fear in your voice behind the word love. Cannot compare my sense of loss to hers, but I feel it as suddenly as she must have on that day, as abruptly as I didn't expect to only yesterday, when I finally found you already gone. Your family still waits for your remains, possibly in landfills of debris where many puzzles of humans were buried or removed to make space for a memorial your family has never visited. Why would they want to see your name in cold stone when what was left of you was tossed aside in hot ash? I wouldn't find comfort there either for my sudden sense of emptiness. My friend said she's sorry to hear that you were murdered, and I see how that's different from killed, and how so much of life is euphemism. I won't speak of souls or the hard comfort of nobility. Truthfully, there's nothing left at any place you were. It's all inside our heads now, in inexplicable places we can't touch, reminding us of our own history, what has left us, when we will leave, when others will sort through dusty memories, and all the places we are not. Wild birds. They come like a wave, dipping, then soaring into an ocean of sky. They don't need to be thoughtful, being who they are, not asking where to go, whom to please. They don't starve, but thrive, though no one feeds them. And I don't know how they die, or where millions of tiny bodies finally rest. Where will I rest when I pass from ponderous thoughts? You see, I don't soar, I ask, unlike the wild birds. Salvation. I wanted everything blazing, even the pebbles in the street, to shine wet with promises, and the rain to cleanse gravel as diamonds, and each window to hold a candle, a beacon of hope as evening fell. Even though they were not my hopes, and others were only shadows along the curtains that blew whimsically, they called to me that I could know someday to turn my Christ eyes to the celestial stirrings and be saved. Ulterior motives. I'm looking for them everywhere now, the powerful persuasion of misinformation in plain sight, because I always believed words and the insistent emotions that pushed them out into the ether, into an auditory semblance of supposed sanity. The journalist asks the politician a question that's been vetted and the answer filtered. It's not as important to know as it is to write it down, something that soothes the curious with self-satisfied occupation, or stirs self-righteous anger that dissipates like steam from a screaming kettle. Everyone has devices. Everyone is surveilled. Everyone worries, but shrugs. And I block my camera on my computer with a sticky note, while truth lingers in the doorway, unrecognized, and everyone pushes past to the next confection. Rawness. After reading the calculated average 11 mass shootings per week, just to give me an approximation of violence, I was statistically shaken. A doctor's testimony brought the visceral into focus. His witness of the carnage, which was no American Western shoot 'em up, down he goes clean and gone, but rather organs spewed across pavement, heads severed and limbs parted, and rivers of red and tears hidden behind sanitized reports. Candles, flowers, teddy bears that blend our thoughts and prayers into media posts. What would one stark photo of a splayed shot human do to bring the truth home, to sever and open your heart? The spoils of carnage. I've lived long enough to know a lot of dead people, but so has a 5-year-old. Yemen, Afghanistan. Anywhere conflict is found profitable, whether on the ground or in our of lost homes, rooms that held memories, kisses, stolen future moments, eviscerated by greed and the entitled thoughts of the privileged, buried in the barrel of a gun. And finally, this one is called Without the Words. I'm often questioning myself, what I write, why I write it, what the words really mean, how they might be received, which of course can be so different for every person. But it's what we have to communicate, and it's what I strive to use to connect. Without the words. As I write, I'm sneaking things in. The permission to peek through truisms about myself, around the words, the license to allow it in the shadows of verse. How would I ever tell you about me? Look into your eyes without flinching. Allow the real of me without the words, the excuse of rhyme, meter, the glitter of alliteration. Could I ever explain it's about you too? And allow you to find pieces of you in me while we are hidden somewhere between the lines that try to astonish us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for letting us listen to your beautiful words and for your courage. It means a lot. And I want to remind our audience that you're free to put your questions into the chat, and I'll read them to Karen. And actually, Karen, we have this very quick first question.
Okay.
What was the most difficult and most interesting when you were studying at university for your degree in literature and writing? I understand it's water under the bridge, but such studies are not so frequent, and that's very interesting.
Yes, it was a while ago, and it gave me a lot of insights into structure. I think the most important thing it did was allow me to study with some really wonderful teachers, to learn, as you've gathered from my poems, I'm a victim of maternal incest and severe abuse. And being able to put myself forward in writing to express myself was very difficult for me until I was being able to open up and share. And I did this in small groups. Most of my classes were small groups. The teachers were wonderful and encouraged me, and my fellow students did the same, as well as personal relationships in my life, people who supported me to do this. But I highly recommend having structure and formal education in your life. But the most important thing you can do is face your wounds and your past squarely, to come through it, not by ignoring the fears, but by facing them, acknowledging them, and sharing them. And I would say that the structure I got at a wonderful university like Columbia was terrific. But most of that healing came later on with age, with the guidance of my wonderful husband I'm with now, who taught me so much about spiritual healing and guidance for that. And that words, you don't have to hide behind the words. You can allow them to speak for you as truthfully as you possibly can. And that's done intuitively, an intuitive connection to the universe that allows you to let the things come through and to speak your truth and to be your authentic self.
Thank you. And since you write about these very sensitive topics and they're very challenging, but what is the most challenging for you in your writing process and for you as a writer?
I think to get out of my own way, because especially writing about difficult personal topics, there's always the impulse for the ego and the self to come in and try to form them in certain ways. And I try to learn to get out of my way and just allow the truth to come through. And not, I used to worry so much about how everything would be received by other people. I think so much of us always worry about others' expectations, and our value is so tied into what others, what we perceive at least, what others expect of us. And there will be many times when people will not want to hear what you have to say for whatever reason. Maybe it touches something personal in them they're not ready to look at, or it just makes them uncomfortable. But it should not preclude you from speaking your own truth. And if someone doesn't want to hear it and needs to leave, I respect that. It's fine. Excuse me. But then you might need to pull back from those people and excuse me, respect them for how they feel, where they're at, because I know I have been in many difficult places in my life before taking on the truth of these things. So I have a lot of compassion for that. But I've learned I cannot write to others' expectations. I have to write from the truth and being who I am.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you kind of, you grew into this process, like where you are right now. It was like a journey. But what initially started your interest in writing poems, and how did you discover that your unique writing voice? Because it's kind of very clear, kind of you can feel there is this voice that is yours specifically. And how did you discover that? Or do you feel that you have discovered that? That would be, I think,
I think I'm still on that journey, but I think at this point in my life, more than ever, as far as writing poems, I started before I was only a few years old. As soon as I could hold a pencil or a pen, I started to write, and I always loved it. But I think the journey to writing authentically and truthfully, you have to face your demons first. You have to be willing to talk about it. Because of what happened to me with the abuse, secrets were paramount. You know, this is between you and me. This is what perpetrators will do. You know, they create what they call special relationships. There are no special relationships. We're all here on our journey. And the best thing we can do is face our pain. I think a lot, and share that with others, because if someone isn't ready to bring that out, maybe something I say will touch them to explore that within themselves and continue on a healing journey. And sharing that is I like to see it as a real act of compassion. My voice is not even so much my own as I think there's a universal truth that we all have access to. It's that gut feeling you feel inside of you when you know something feels right or it doesn't feel right. Many times it doesn't feel right, and we just go through it anyway because the ego or, you know, we circumstances push us through it. But I guess one of the things about getting older is you're not hopefully as worried about what others will think of you. You're more concerned with being your authentic self and speaking the truth. And I think that's where my voice really comes from. That if you heard my voice and all of my nonsense that I've spewed out over the years, you probably wouldn't be very interested. But I find poetry, I write in many different genres, but I find poetry in particular has a way of being cathartic and synthesizing the emotions much more deeply. For me.
But also we noticed that you're currently writing a memoir. How is your approach to writing poems and writing memoir differ?
Well, it is different. I've been going back and forth with the memoir for a very long time. I've had a very interesting life. of course, there's the abuse and all of these other things to write about. But the repercussions from that, and what really caused me to fall so many times in my life, to take wrong turns, to be hurtful to people, because I was hurt. I'm on a journey to heal that. I don't, it's sort of like do unto others as you wish done to you, not as was done to you. And I think so many of us who are hurt, which is, I would venture to say everybody to one degree or another, even if we don't recognize it, we strike out in the world. We strike out at others. We go into relationships for the wrong reason. We don't have a deep sense of who we are and why we act the way we do in the world. And it's hard. You have to take your ego and put it aside and really take a hard look at yourself and how you act in the world, how your words affect people, how your actions affect people, and have the compassion for the fact that we are all on this journey together. We're not separate. I mean, I'm telling you now what I believe, obviously. And that has helped me tremendously to open up my own heart, because from the abuse, my heart was very, very closed for most of my life. And now I don't want that to be the case. I want to be vulnerable, which I saw as a detriment. Being vulnerable is having heart. And if someone doesn't like it or feels uncomfortable with me for doing that, I let them go with compassion. They're not where they want to go yet.
Thank you. I guess there is time for every person. I'm happy that you're in this kind of stage of your journey. It's wonderful. There is one more question. Today, the audience is very, very active. I prep my own questions, but they are just throwing so many questions in the chat, and that's a very good sign. How do you approach the creative process when writing a new poem? Any specific rituals or habits you find helpful in nurturing your creativity?
I would tell any writer, poet or otherwise, read, read, read. I find other writers, especially very good writers, inspiring. They inspire me to write. Very often a music can do it, a conversation, sometimes dreams. I'll wake up in the morning with a line in my head, and then the hard work comes in when you have to start developing it. Sometimes that flows better than others. Sometimes you need to pull back and step away from it and let it sort of ferment a little bit and then go back to it. And not everyone is going to be, a hit. So sometimes it's okay to just let things go. Maybe you come back to it in a year, 2 years, and others just flow more easily. But the inspiration is really having an open heart. Having let yourself be open to what you're experiencing in the world around you.
Thank you. And are there any rituals, and that was the second part of the question, that you have, for example, you write only in the morning or you write in the evening? You mentioned that you have things like when the poems come to you, but is there any specific routine that you kind of built to write? Or is it more intuitive and situational?
It can be any time, but typically I find the morning I'm very fresh and I have a lot of ideas. I haven't been clouded with the nonsense of the day yet, kind of. So I'll sit and do a lot of the writing then. But sometimes if something comes to me, at least just not to lose a line or an idea or a thought, just jotting it down. I always have paper or my phone or something near me that I can use so I don't lose the thought, because I've played the game of, oh, I know what that is. I'll remember that line later. No, 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 especially as you get older. No. So it's important to, but I would say I've always had more energy earlier in the day. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but it kind of, when the spirit moves you, and I realize people have obligations. They have to, when I worked and I had small children, I had to find the time, if they're taking a nap or, whenever it might be, just to try and squeeze in those few moments. But if you really want to do it, you do it. Yeah.
Thank you. There is one more question. As a female author, have you encountered any unique challenges, opportunities in the literary world, and how do you approach overcoming them?
I haven't really. I know women who have, and I know it exists. It exists against people of color. It's existed against women. It's interesting. I edited a book for wonderful author Mark Perlman, and it takes place both in France and in the U.S., and it's a historical novel. And I edited that for him, and I thought, this is great. We'll get this published without a problem, and because I do editing work as well. And we submitted it, and a couple of publishers loved it until they found out he was a white Jewish male, and his main character is Black. There are many different characters in the book, and it was felt that it was not appropriate for him. They didn't feel comfortable doing this. But of course, here in France, a publisher published it last year, and it's doing very well. And now he's made it available on Amazon. But I said to myself, as a woman in her 60s, am I not allowed to write about other people, races, genders? If we're, it's a matter of seeing us as all connected. If your heart is open to other people's experiences, to portraying it properly and with respect, I just don't understand that type of thinking. But there's a lot of, politically sensitive things that go on. But I think I've been pretty fortunate in not having come up against that kind of thing, really, unless it happened and I got turned down and I didn't even know why. Maybe, I don't know.
Actually, a very hot topic in the literary world. Like I read about it, and Zadie Smith, I think, wrote an essay. I think it's called "In Defense of Fiction," for like, and the thing, I don't want. I read it a couple of years ago, but I think it was the same thing. Like, if you can be empathetic towards other people, why can't you write about them? But I know it's a huge one, and I know there are a lot of hot debates about it. I sometimes started them too. But there was, I think, on your website, I'm sorry if I picked into that, but it was there that you helped other people to write their memoirs. And how does the process feel different from writing your own thing and like helping other people kind of bring up the topics that are inside of them, or like put their life experience on paper?
I learned a lot from working with others on their life stories, because again, I see us all as sharing to some degree or other common experiences. Mine can be very different from someone else's, but I believe we all experience trauma to one degree or another, disappointments, a whole range of emotions that are human emotions. And I think if we have a compassionate heart, we can put ourselves in the place of that other person. And of course, working with them, try to convey their story as authentically and truthfully as possible. And doing it for myself has been very cathartic. I'm still in the early stages of doing this, writing about, very directly about and honestly about what has happened, and taking responsibility for many things in my own life, not just things that were done to me. But I have worked with several people, and I think that it helped me build up to the point of taking on my own memoir. And so that's what I'm in the process of now. I've sort of taken a step back from it, but it can be tough at times, because you're reliving everything. It's helpful and it's good, but I also want to do it from the right intentions. I don't see myself necessarily as a hero's journey. Oh, she was abused and now she's come through and here she is and she's doing well. Yes, I'm doing well, but I think I have a lot of responsibility to a lot of people in my life too, people I've hurt. And I think that the abuse done to me has also enlightened me to be aware of that in myself. So it's not just a victim type of situation.
What do you hope? You just mentioned that, but just kind of like to, what do you believe? Like, actually, the question: as a poet, how do you believe the written word can contribute to a greater sense of understanding and empathy about people? And how do you? My question would be: how do you expect, or what do you hope your poetry, your written word, will do, or kind of how will it contribute to people?
First and foremost, that it will open their heart to themselves, to their own lives, to what resonates with them, to truth, to look for the truth. You know, it's kind of a funny thing if you go up to anyone and say, "Are you honest? Are you truthful?" Everyone goes, "Oh yes, of course I'm honest, I'm truthful." We're very rarely honest and truthful because we're so beholden to others' opinions of us. And I mean, you go on social media, you see this all the time. People are craving attention, they're craving validation. It's one of the toughest things is to feel validated within yourself. I hope when I share my poems that they open up people's hearts to examine their own lives, their own feelings, their own truths, to speak authentically to themselves and to others through their own work. If they're right.
And I don't think we have much time, but like I normally finish with like, what advice would you give to aspiring poets? But I would ask a different question. How would you, what would be your advice for people who want to tap into their authenticity, who want to kind of like, maybe there is some instruction or kind of like steps towards being more authentic or kind of bringing your authenticity to the surface?
Be ruthless with yourself.
Wow.
You know, there's a thing, you're pointing your fingers. Remember, you're pointing at someone, there's 3 pointing back at you. And I have found that when I am disturbed by something someone does or says or that I see, there's something in it for me to learn. You know, we're always quick to point a finger at someone else. Yes, some people are responsible for and should be held responsible for doing certain things that are egregious or not acceptable to us. But we are each responsible to look for those things in ourselves as well. And it sounds, you know, like I said, everyone wants to be truthful, but when you really start doing that kind of excavation work on yourself, it's amazing how you lie to yourself. Oh, it was like this. And we love to make excuses, and we love to blame, and we love to push guilt. And it's not about feeling guilty even about things you've done. It's about learning from them. What can I get from this that won't allow me to repeat this? And will allow me to grow as not just as a poet, but as a human being, and most importantly, as a spirit.
Thank you so much. I guess people, all the audience is going to go and be ruthless with themselves today and learn to be more authentic. And thank you so much for bringing up the questions of all the sensitive topics, all the talks about honesty, about authenticity. I guess it's so important in this, in our world, and in these questions about validation, about this effect of the people, like outside and inside world, and it's so important. And thank you so much, Corinne, for being with us today, and thank you to the American Center in Moscow for giving us this opportunity to talk to you and to listen to your wonderful words. Until we meet again.
Thank you, Zamira, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Yes.